Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sana Maqbool, and in today's show, we will be talking about the recent developments regarding the Afghan peace process and what has been going on in the recent days and what we will think is going to be the future of the Afghan peace process. Of course, this discussion continues in light of what has been happening in the past few days, which includes a very important peace plan that has been put forward by the United States towards jump-starting the Afghanistan peace process, which some media outlets have been calling a moonshot peace plan, and others, especially Afghan politicians and including the President Ashraf Ghani, have been talking about in terms of a plan that amounts to dictation by the United States, and that which is not going to be acceptable by the Afghanistan political parties. It remains to be seen how this is going to go well with the Taliban and the Afghan officials, and what exactly are the other parties going to be doing with regards to that. Now, other developments have been that Pakistan has been invited by Russia to a meeting of extended troika on Afghan peace being held on March 18th in Moscow. The United States, China, Pakistan, the Afghan government and the Taliban have been invited to attend the coming expanded trilateral consultations. Also, frustrated by a stalled peace process and escalating violence, the US has presented an 8-page draft peace agreement to Afghanistan's warring sides. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has written to the Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, suggesting ways to accelerate Afghanistan's stalled peace process in Afghanistan and achieve a lasting ceasefire. Antony Blinken proposed convening a United Nations facilitated conference with foreign ministers and envoys from Russia, China, Pakistan, Iran, India and the United States to discuss a unified approach to supporting peace in Afghanistan. Furthermore, the US will ask Turkey to host a senior-level meeting of both sides in the coming weeks to finalize a peace agreement. Washington has not ruled out any option regarding Afghanistan, including the full withdrawal of its forces by the 1st of May. United States Special Envoy for Afghan Reconciliation, Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad, met Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa as part of Washington's new diplomatic push on the Afghan peace process. We will be shedding light on all of these issues and more in our discussions. And to further our discussions, we have been joined by a number of guests. In the studio, we have with us senior analyst Mr. Bashir Ali Momin. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. And we also have been joined in the studio by columnist Dr. Nazir Mahmood. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us today. On Skype, we have with us former Ambassador Shahid Kiani. Thank you, sir, for being with us. I hope you can hear me.
I said it's an honor. Can you hear? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you for joining us, sir. We've also been joined on telephone line by Deputy Director Asia Program, Michael Kirkleman, and we will be talking to all of our guests regarding these developments. I will be starting with our guests in the studio. First of all, Mr. Momin, talking to you regarding what has been going on in the past. We'll move on towards how we'll see Russia's involvement in this or Pakistan's role in furthering the Afghan peace process in the future. But considering the fact that the major development that we've seen in the past few days is the fact that this peace process, this peace plan has come forward from the United States. And many are talking about this peace plan as highly ambitious or something which depicts the U.S. urgency in terms of making sure that this peace process does go towards something more than the stalled position that it has been since September, perhaps. How do you see this entire proposal? Do you think it's far-fetched, or do you think it's more like a moonshot or miracle program or a plan by the U.S. and that it's not very grounded in what actually the parties in Afghanistan might want to adhere to?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, naturally now the US is exactly in the same position which the USSR was in Afghanistan. And they had to leave Afghanistan in shambles, you know.
Yeah.
It was a problem. We even to certain extent suffer. Like, you know, we had this explosion here.
Absolutely.
In Pindi, Ojri camp, which it was directly linked with that because they created, you know, an environment because they wanted an exit for the Soviet. So the Soviet, which had come with all that, you know, their troops, tanks, aircraft and all that stuff, finally they had to. Afghanistan is a country, if you go back in the history, nobody has ever captured it. Even if it has been captured,
haven't been able to
nobody
capture
has ever ruled them. So all those things, if you look into this thing, when they came, I know because I was directly involved into this. I was at that time heading the ISI setup of the now Khyber Pakhtunkhwa KPK at that time, and I was directly, involved in all that. So I know what was going on. Now they had to leave the country in a very bad shape, with casualties, variety, there are views about it, more than 30,000 killed, more than 100,000 wounded and all that stuff. Now the Americans, if they are trying to push their peace, this plan, whatever it is, I mean, they must realize that the people of Afghanistan are the same. Whether it was for the Russian or whether it was prior to that and all that stuff. So they exactly know. It is the American who has created this scenario now that they can't stay there. And the things will get worse to this thing if they stay, for a longer period.
Right. Right, and the US has indicated that the plan of actually withdrawing the troops by the 1st of May is still there. But even that leaves us to question whether or not they're actually going to be leaving something tangible behind. I mean, this just seems like a very rushed plan at the moment. And then if according to the peace agreement that they've had with the Taliban, if they do actually pull out their troops by the 1st of May, they're again leaving Afghanistan in shambles. And there's still no guarantee of whether or not the intra-Afghan negotiations that we've been wanting for such a long time are actually going to result in something which is a peaceful settlement for the Afghanistanis, because it really is about the people of Afghanistan that we require peace more than anything else. Mr. Nazir, your take on that?
Well, I look at this development rather positively in a couple of senses. Why? Because Trump used to do it all alone. His policy was not to involve anyone. He did not even discuss it with Ashraf Ghani when he concluded that agreement in February last year.
Right.
And it was kind of a dictation that Trump was giving to Ashraf Ghani, and without involving.
Is this less of a dictation? Would you
No,
say?
not as yet. Why? Let me tell you what the differences are, what my take on this is. Why it is different? Because probably for the first time, America has tried to broaden the negotiation table. Previously, under Trump, it was all alone. Now, in the letter that Blinken has written to Ashraf Ghani, it very clearly chalks out at least 2 steps. One, involving other countries which up till now America was reluctant to involve.
And the United Nations, which has also been on the periphery in this whole
scenario. So involving Russia, China, even Iran, which is an enemy, they are not on good terms.
Right.
But this, I look at it as positively, because if America agrees to sit with Iran and with Russia and even with China, so that's why I think that America is genuinely they are in need of, and they are also willing to have a negotiated settlement somehow. So that's why I say it is a positive step, number one. And number two, involvement of UN also, as you pointed out. So because somehow after 40 years, we need to find a solution to it. Who will find a solution? Taliban want to occupy the whole of Afghanistan. Ashraf Ghani wants to continue ruling. Both options are improbable because the war has been going on for long. And as my colleague also mentioned, that the situation is almost the same as it was in when Russia left. But slightly, I remind that it was more like 1991, when Russia had left 3 years back in 1989, and 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed. After that 1 year, Najibullah tried to negotiate a deal to involve these people, the Mujahideen and all. But at that time, Mujahideen were adamant that we will occupy Kabul. And they did occupy. And what happened as a result? For 10 years, there was complete chaos, civil war. They could not agree. So that's why, it is not possible for Taliban to occupy. It is not possible for Ashraf Ghani to continue. So there has to be a solution. And the only possible solution is you involve all the parties, you sit, and probably America is going to, right now, they are willing to take a back seat, and they are going to hand over and say that now you find a solution and tell us how to get get rid of the problem.
Right, you're absolutely right that at the end of the day, the only solution is a political solution, and I believe
Yes.
all the parties have finally realized that and have come to the same conclusion. But really the question is, how far long are we going to delay coming to that end, and how much damage are we going to suffer before we actually do end up in a political solution? Because even if there is all sorts of destruction, at the end there is political solution, but we're trying to make sure that we avoid it because it's already been so long that this has been going on. And even though this draft that the US has presented is 8-page long, don't you think that the real issues that were still on the negotiating table, that were still issues concerning both the Afghanistan, the government and the officials in Afghanistan and the Taliban, are still not really addressed as properly as it should have been? Is this really a step forward in that sense? Because again, it's up to them to agree to these terms or not, right? This is just a proposal, Mr. Momin.
Well, I agree with you. You know, so far we don't know that what will be the role of Taliban.
Right.
Okay. And minus Taliban, I think there will never, ever be peace in Afghanistan.
And I don't think that's even possible now to minus them.
There's no question.
Right.
We have seen it. The only people that to whatever degree can influence the Taliban are we, the Pakistan.
Okay.
They would listen to us. But again, not in the manner that the Afghan used to listen to us. Now the things have changed. Now that since the things have changed, now we have to look into that
Of course, their
point
political
also.
position has changed.
Their position
the
has
power
changed.
has changed.
Exactly.
They have more say. They have
And
more voice.
unless Taliban are actively involved, there will be no solution. And you know, imagine the person who is negotiating on behalf of America, or who's the leading man, spokesperson, whatever you call it, this fellow Khalik Zadeh. To me and you, maybe he may be Afghan, but the Afghan don't consider him as Afghan. You know, a Jew wife, American settler, and all that. So, and they don't like to talk to even him. Well, I happen to have direct access and my lot of meetings with the top hierarchy, the Taliban commanders in the past.
Okay.
Now there are no more commanders, of course, in a different setup.
Right.
So all these things have to be taken in consideration. We in Pakistan, because now once this thing starts, this negotiation,
right,
there will be a pressure. There will be a pressure from the American side on us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So because Taliban, we are the only people. We are the only people that they would, to whatever
and we
degree.
have played a vital role, and we'll come more towards what Pakistan can do in the future
exactly.
regarding this as well. Mr. Shahid Ghani, I'd like to involve you in the discussion as well. Looking forward at this proposal that has been presented by the US, there has been talk about President Ashraf Ghani's role and maybe him having a more rigid stance and being a much bigger hindrance to achieving peace in Afghanistan than anything else. And maybe it is Ashraf Ghani's inflexibility that is causing a lot of problems here. How do you see Mr. Ashraf Ghani's position in the future? He is so far saying that the only way for peace in Afghanistan is elections, and there's no compromise on that. That's the only way that's going to happen. And he's not in favor of what the US has presented as the interim government that needs to be there. So considering the fact that Mr. Ashraf Ghani is standing on his stance and the fact that he may be one of the biggest hurdles in the process, how do you see Mr. Ashraf Ghani and the Afghan officials in the future? Is there going to be more pressure? Is the situation going to change? Will they be able to stand on this rigidity in the future as well?
Let me first say there is a series of activities which you need to connect with each other. First is Mr. Blinken's letter to President Ghani. And it seems that Mr. Blinken, the new Secretary, US Secretary of State, has been informed, has been updated as to the opinion of me. He's become very, very rigid. Mr. Khalid Saad, he is the representative of the US government and is respected within the United States and the Afghan government, even Taliban, because he's been negotiating with all the three. He has been able to get the trust of the three. Now, let me tell you something very interesting has happened. President Blinken, Mr. Blinken's letter is very, very, very blunt. He has advised President Ghani the time is not on his side. He needs to be flexible. At the same time, they have shared a very long, what you call peace plan with the Taliban. And then you see something interesting has happened. Look at the Russian initiative. Russian initiative is like the interpreting the tyranny of geography. These countries which they have invited, they are more practical. They didn't invite India. Do you remember? Have you seen the difference between the United States and Russian? Because Russia, China, Pakistan, they are the countries which are directly affected by the continuing instability and civil war in Afghanistan. We have suffered, all these countries have suffered. That is the reason that they've invited Pakistan. They have not invited India. Because if you let me tell you frankly, in any talks between Pakistan and India, whenever they take place, the 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 elephant in the room is Afghanistan. These two countries will have to come to an understanding. But India is not a regional player within this thing. That is the reason the Russians have kept them out. At the same time, another diplomatic move you will see for the last few years, the relationship between United States and Turkey have not been good. But now United States have played a very important diplomatic move. The UN sponsored talks to take place in Turkey. So giving Turkey another important role in this. Now the thing is that President Ghani, absolutely correct, doesn't have the time on his side. If you remember, former President Trump had made a statement about maybe a year back. He said that if we withdraw our forces, the President Ghani's government cannot last for even few weeks. And he knows it. So you see, the United States has bankrolled successive Afghan governments for the last now 19 years. They have a very important role. But at the same time, the domestic pressure within the American government is that they need to adhere to the withdrawal because they know
Right.
that if they don't go, so and Pakistan has played a very pivotal role in persuading the Taliban to go to the talks. But we have our limitations. The Taliban are extremely independent-minded people. They can, as you say, this famous saying that you can take a horse to a water, but you cannot make him drink. So there is pressure now on the Afghan government and on the Taliban both that they need to move quickly, come to understand because intra-Afghan talks are the vital thing which will bring peace to Afghanistan,
Absolutely.
and both Taliban
That is the
and
only
the
way
Afghan
forward.
government have to be flexible.
Absolutely. That is the only way forward. We'll talk more about that. We have been joined by Michael Kugelman, Deputy Director, Asia Program. Thank you for joining us. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good evening.
All right. We've been discussing about the proposal that has come from the U.S. side regarding the peace settlement in Afghanistan and the fact that this may be a jumpstart to the negotiations between Afghan officials and the Taliban. What do you make of the proposal, and do you think that it actually takes into account the realities that have been going on in terms of the intra-Afghan negotiations that have been happening in Afghanistan, and whether or not the Afghan officials and the Taliban and other parties that are included and are stakeholders in the Afghanistan peace process, their issues and their concerns have been addressed in this peace plan that has been put forward by the U.S.? Or would you say that it may not be as realistic as it seems?
Well, I would describe this proposal as a very ambitious effort on the part of the U.S. government to create better conditions on the ground in Afghanistan that would then allow for an eventual responsible U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Clearly, the proposal intends to make more efforts to get the peace process moving. It wants to accelerate the peace process, and it wants to ensure that violence starts to reduce. And I think those are the conditions the U.S. government would like to see in order to feel comfortable about withdrawing. So in other words, if the U.S. is confident that a floundering peace process has picked up speed, and if it sees that the Taliban and other parties have agreed to reduce violence, they would then feel comfortable withdrawing. But this is a very, very ambitious and I would argue unrealistic proposal. I think that the U.S. government is expecting too many big things to happen in too little time. I mean, the idea here is to, in a matter of weeks, have the two sides talking and having laid the groundwork for formal peace talks. There's also, I think, the effort to get a regional consensus on the way forward in Afghanistan is well-intentioned, but that could take months, given the differing interests and competing interests of these different countries in the region. And I think that perhaps for Washington, one of the biggest challenges is getting President Ghani on board. He has long rejected the new interim government that the U.S. is pushing for here in this proposal. So perhaps the U.S. has decided that he's not important and then it's going to work around him. But this is the president of Afghanistan, and I think that among other things, the U.S. government could find itself with a new diplomatic crisis with the Afghan government. And it could also spark a political crisis in Afghanistan, given that there are many of political figures in Kabul, including rivals of Ghani, who support this proposal and are perfectly happy with the establishment of a new government. They don't mind if Ashraf Ghani loses power. So bottom line answer to your question, I think it's the right idea. It's very well intentioned. It tries to do the right things, particularly in terms of reducing the violence. But you just need a lot more time than I think the U.S. would like to invest in this in order for there to be a stronger chance of success.
Right, and there's also the 1st of May that is looming ahead, and there's not much time in that. There are not a few months. There's just hardly a 1.5 month left in that. And considering the fact, like you said, Mr. Ashraf Ghani's stance has been rigid in the past as well, and even now he has completely rejected the idea of an interim government and has said elections will be the only way to peace in Afghanistan. But if you're suggesting that maybe Ashraf Ghani can be taken out of the picture and the U.S. might be able to work around him, do you see any such options for the U.S., considering that they have that pressure of withdrawing their troops by the 1st of May as well, with regards to their deal with the Taliban earlier?
Well, one way that I read the proposal that Secretary Blinken sent was basically it was meant to pressure Ashraf Ghani into agreeing to a new interim government with the threat of pulling all U.S. troops by May 1st if he does not agree to that. I think that, to me, is how the letter reads.
But that seems not to be happening.
I was just going to say it'll be very difficult to try to work around Ashraf Ghani, and as I said, if you try to just focus on the Taliban and on rivals of his that are willing to work on this peace process, that could spark a major political crisis in Kabul. So I think it's very risky, especially at a moment like this when you're trying to build unity and inclusivity within the political class in Kabul. The U.S. government doesn't want there to be another political crisis there now.
Right. And talking about inclusivity, this has also been something that has been put forward in the letter by Blinken as well. And that's not just with regards to the warring parties in Afghanistan, which in fact is also one of the major issues and hindrance towards peace process in Afghanistan. But the fact that many other parties are being brought into the forefront, including the United Nations, including Turkey, and Russia has also put forward an initiative now. A lot of these parties are being more involved in the Afghanistan peace process than they were before. Do you think that this would bode well for the future in Afghanistan and peace in general? Because, of course, all the parties do have their own interests as well. How optimistic are you with regards to the U.S. being able to achieve its goal by including all of these parties in the process?
I think it's the right idea to be looking at regional diplomacy to build a consensus, because I think that it's going to be very hard to reach a sustained peace in Afghanistan if you don't have the key players on board, certainly Pakistan, but also Iran, China, Russia. But I do think it's a big risk for the Biden administration to bring India into the mix now. And I know that in Pakistan there's a lot of suspicion about India's role in Afghanistan. But for me, as an outside analyst, I see the idea of India and Pakistan sitting at the same table with other regional players to build a consensus. That's going to be very difficult to do, and certainly it cannot be done quickly, as the Biden administration seems to think is the idea.
Right. Thank you very much for joining us, Michael Kugelman, Deputy Director Asia Program, and shedding light on what you think might be the future of the Afghanistan peace process. Of course, inclusivity or unity and bringing all the parties to the table, making sure everyone's involved and their concerns are addressed, seems like the ideal option. But in reality, whether or not that may be achieved is not. Like Mr. Michael was talking about, India and Pakistan being on the same table is a major issue, especially with regards to the fact that we believe that India has been making a lot of progress in terms of derailing this entire process and has its objective in making sure that peace has not achieved in the region. With regards to how do you see all of these parties coming together, with particular reference to the initiative by Russia? Now, India has been involved in the process, but what will come out of that?
From Russia, from Russian meeting?
Right.
Well, this is very interesting. Traditionally for the past 60 years, Russia, Soviet Union and Russia, they were close, and India, they were close allies. And now after Modi took over power in 2014, there was suddenly this bonhomie between America and Modi. They became close friends. And now Russia is excluding India, which is for us is a good sign, because by excluding India, Russia is also sending a signal to India that now you are aligning yourself to America, which is not welcome to Russia.
Yeah.
So I think Russia did the right thing, and ultimately America also should have excluded India, because India is not a bordering country, and India is, though I mean, technically speaking, we are neighbors and there should be nothing wrong sitting together, but since India has been using Afghan soil against Pakistan also, and you know, this has been proved. This is not a rumor.
Right.
This has been happening. So one of the major obstacle in moving forward from American proposal will be that, you know, involving India will not be a good sign. Involving Iran is right, China is right, even Russia is right, but involving India I don't think is a good sign. So America should have avoided it. Now, looking at Russian meeting, I don't think that Russia will be able to offer a concrete solution.
Okay.
Because again, I don't think that Ashraf Ghani government will be participating in it. Even if they participate, they will not be agreeing to share power with Afghanistan without American presence.
Right.
America is the occupying force, practically speaking. So I don't see anything positive coming from Russian meeting. But as I said earlier, that I see positively the letter from, one more point I will, nobody has talked about that. If you read the letter carefully, the letter from Blinken to Ashraf Ghani, in the later part of the letter, he has suggested to Ashraf Ghani, involving two more people, including Hamid Karzai and Professor Abdul Rasul Saeed. He very clearly, Blinken has written that now 4 people, that means Abdullah, Ghani himself, Saeed and Hamid Karzai. Now, this interesting point, why Blinken has asked Ashraf Ghani to form a group of 4, because he thinks that talking to Ashraf Ghani alone is not going to bring fruit, and if 4 people are combined, probably they might come to pressure on Ashraf Ghani to conclude that, you know, sit together and try to find a solution. So I can see that there is a possibility of Ashraf Ghani on his way out.
Do you think that Ashraf Ghani's future is weak? He's standing on weak
It
ground
is
right
unstable
now.
It is
His
unstable.
rigid stances may not be respected and may not even be counted in the entire peace process. Mr. Momin?
Well, I think Ashraf Ghani, according to the, you know what I'm saying, is from the Afghan people. Well, only 3 days back I was in Peshawar, and there are probably more than 3 dozen family living in my area, houses and all that stuff. Ashraf Ghani has no respect. Forget about the president, even as a person. He has a problem with Abdullah. That is the internal situation. And, well, he can't play any role. The role which will be played, let's say, now this is very new to me, as my friend has just said, there's Rasul Saeed. Rasul Saeed was one of the Afghan, you know, those leaders. Again, he was known, confirmed, an American stooge. Out of the leaders and Saudis, he was totally on the Saudi, this thing, you know, living on them. So it's a very complicated, let me tell you, it's not that easy.
Of course not.
That the Americans, then the people over there, they hate the American. And with the passage of time, as I said initially in my, that the people, they will never accept anything from that side. Now again, it's a good, to me also, it's a good sign that the Russians, who have been for decades, you know, the Indians, you know, they were supporting them in all against us, all the operations and things which went on. Today they are saying, okay, out. And it's a right thing.
Right.
They have no role. The only role they are playing now, you know, it's just my friend has already said that, you know, they are involved in Quetta, they are involved in Peshawar. From the Afghan this thing. And purely they are paying the money. So the money is playing, it's not the people. You know, they decided, there was a time they decided to send troops, which the Afghan government had asked, 2 divisions. And let me tell you, once that was told in one of the meeting in Middle East somewhere, General Kiani was attending that function, and somebody said that, you know, when he finished his speech, he was asked, well, General, you didn't talk about that, the Indian involvement of the Indian troops if they come. His reply was simple, one, but he said, I wish they come. So I wish they come, you can understand, you know, what does that mean. So the Indian has no play. They are playing with the Afghan people, money, they have no respect there. It's not a bordering country and all that, whatever my friend has already said.
All right. Okay, Mr. Shahid Kiani, let's talk about the warring parties, of course, in Afghanistan and the age-old animosities that have existed for a while. They seem to be, their concerns seem also to be addressed in this proposal by the US, and their involvement will also be interesting to see how the future is going to hold in terms of the Afghan peace process and what exactly will be the settlement that will be achieved by the parties. But do you think that that is going to result in some sort of durable peace? How are these parties going to be brought to the table in ways that is substantial and concrete and is lasting, more importantly, because after the US withdrawal, what will be the future of Afghanistan is still uncertain.
The thing is, the Democracy sword is the 1st of May withdrawal. United States, the sole superpower, United States negotiated the withdrawal. If you see the peace process, United States cannot be seen as some, you know, a pushover country which signed an agreement and now say we cannot adhere to the agreement. I tell you, Taliban will never accept it. This is extremely important. Second thing is, Taliban, there is nothing like President Ghani, they like or not. He is still in power, supported by the Americans, and they have been holding intra-Afghan talks, which is being led by Mr. Abdullah, but naturally speaking, in consultation with President Ghani. So the most important thing here is the intra-Afghan talks, and then the deadline of 1st May. I do not understand as to how United States will find a way, being able to convince Taliban that yes, we are not going to withdraw on the 1st of May, we're going to take a few months. This needs to be renegotiated. Would Taliban be brought on the table to renegotiate? I have all my doubts. The President Ghani has to become flexible. Even Taliban have to be flexible. They have to find a way for a transitional government sitting in Kabul, where will they decide whether this would be election would be held, or would they find another way to govern Afghanistan? Because if they don't do it, then you look at that is the reason I consider the talks in Russia to be important. Why? Because China, Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan, the Taliban have been invited. They are the core group, the countries which are affected by the continuing instability and civil war in Afghanistan. I think Taliban are wise people. They have suffered also. The people of Afghanistan have suffered. We have suffered as a country through this,
Absolutely.
the issue of terrorism in our country, the extremism,
Definitely.
and the continuous presence of the Afghan refugees here. So we are concerned about it.
Mr. Kiani, do you not see, in what ways do you see the 1st of May deadline in the US? Will there be a possibility of the US withdrawal without being able to renegotiate with the Taliban? Because the letter that Blinken has written has that sort of urgency, saying that this is still on the table, that they might as well just leave, and that the Afghan government and Ashraf Ghani better hurry up and come to a negotiated settlement before that. That seems to be the air in the letter, at least.
If you see, if the United States, as Biden has, yes, Mr. Blinken has said, and he has said something interesting also. He said with the spring offensive, the Taliban may occupy, you know, the whole Afghanistan. For us, it will be a total disaster. Let us hope that sanity prevails within Taliban and the Afghan government. And because if the Americans just leave without any settlement, believe it or not, we will be the worst, because we have suffered and will continue to suffer. Let us hope sanity prevails. And I consider the Taliban naturally they are a very important stakeholder to be wise people. But I cannot say what is going to happen. Mr. Kogelman has gone to, he has made a very fine analysis of what is going to happen. Impracticality is one thing, but the other thing is the United States is signatory to an agreement. Taliban are signatory to the agreement. So how they find a way out of this, I have no idea. I cannot say anything.
Right, it does seem to be a deadlock.
I disagree
yes.
slightly
Okay.
with Ambassador Kayani when he says that Taliban are wise people. I mean, had they been wise, they should not have been following the policy they have been. Had they been wise, they should not have tried to establish a medieval kind of kingdom for 5 years which they ruled. The treatment that they meted out to women, the terrorist activities that they committed, are these signs of wise people? Now, even after agreement signing with America, they continued with their attacks on forces, on children, on women. So all these show that they want to re-establish a medieval kingdom. They are a regressive force, and if they think that they will occupy Kabul and the world will accept that, I am sorry, Mr. Ambassador, Honorable Ambassador, I don't agree with this. They are not wise people. If they want to prove their wisdom, they need to change their policy. This is a disastrous policy of continuing their attack that they are following.
Mr. Mohammed, you wanted to add something?
No, I don't agree with my friend totally. Taliban, this wise and unwise, I don't know what does my friend mean by that. Well, they are wise. Otherwise, they are playing with the entire world. Whether it's the American, whether it is the Russians, the kind of relation that they have, that's a separate story that they don't come up with that thing. As far as I don't know why we are so, keen to take this thing that the world will not. Afghanistan, my dear sir, has for centuries, is a tribal society. Why don't we believe now? Why don't we think that way?
But perhaps in the future that may not be possible for them to carry on, especially after
tribal
all of
society
this.
they want to continue with.
They
That
want
might
to
not be
carry.
possible.
No, for years, for more than 2,000-3,000 years, they have
Do you
done
think
it.
after all of this war and
In
these
21st
settlements,
century, tribal society
will that be able to
continuing.
continue after US withdrawal?
You will
you
see.
think they will
Let's see. There will be a lot of discussion the way we are doing.
Okay,
So
sure.
we are. It's okay.
Of course.
It's good for the consumption
Absolutely.
of the masses. But the people, the kind of people they are, it's a tribal this thing. So temporarily,
But
yes.
do you mean to say, sir, that there has been no change in the way that the people have thought over the years, and that there will be no change in the future in terms of what sort of government or
I have
political
my
settlement or
doubts.
constitution will have? No change.
No, I have my doubts.
All right.
I know them.
I respect
know their nature. The same person, as I told you, Khalik Zadeh, he is the one, it's not it wasn't President Trump, and it was neither Biden or somebody. It is he who will be playing all these cards, okay? But they don't even consider him as a Afghan. They said, forget it, he's an American. That is one side. Then there are a lot of things.
But they have not been able to dismiss the Americans or the US involvement as easily as that.
That is, your mind must be thinking that we cannot dismiss.
But we have had to have an agreement with them, didn't we?
They have used the power, they have come. The same thing was done by the Russian. They had initially come, they had started from 1917. After the revolution, Balkh, Bukhara, Samarkand and all this one by one went. But they had to apply the brakes when they reached to Afghanistan. And finally, even when they came to Afghanistan, what happened to them? You must have only read the things. I have seen the Afghanistan during that period.
Right.
So what the people have done to them, force, yes, the Russian they used the force, they came all along and they went up to Wakhan Tung, captured all that area. But could they stay? No. So the American,
But the Americans can't stay as well.
Yes, they are using, why don't we let them sort out their own tribal system. I think if we can help them in that, and we can. No,
but clearly it is not as simple as it may seem, because it's been going on for such a long time, which is what the people are trying to achieve.
Our
that
nose
is the
into
objective.
their affair?
We've already done that a long time ago.
No. So
All
this
right.
is wrong.
So,
It's totally wrong.
Of course, that of course is a different debate.
So much we have suffered at the hands of Taliban,
All
but
of
still
us.
we keep supporting
Absolutely,
them.
absolutely. But thank you very much, sir, for joining
Welcome.
us. Thank you, Dr. Nazir, for joining us. And thank you very much for our guests, Ms. Shahid Gyani and
Mr.
Michael Ukelman, for being with us in the discussion. Of course, it remains to be seen what happens in Afghanistan, wise or unwise. What we want is peace for Afghanistan, which is Afghan-led and Afghan-owned. And that is what Pakistan desires, and it was what the region desires as well. And we hope that that will be the future. Thank you so much.